Hi, I'm Alise Chaffins, and today I'm speaking with Amy Nicholson, the director of the documentary Happy Campers, coming to video demand on September 10th. Thank you so much for joining me today, Amy. I appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you talk a little bit about how you found this community and how long you spent with them and that kind of thing?
Well, I grew up in Maryland, and Chicoteague Island is one of those places that you go for vacation. It's kind of the local vacation spot, along with Ocean City, Maryland. Virginia Beach. It's kind of one of those. Rehoboth, um, and my parents went there quite a bit, and my dad. It's still his favorite beach in the whole world because the beach there is a national park. Um, but we never stayed in the family campgrounds. And so I wandered in there one day taking photographs, and I thought, wow, this looks like a lot of fun. But it was wintertime.
Mm.
So I went back many years later in the summer. And when I saw it full of people and full of life, I just fell in love with it. So I moved in.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So you were there, like living in that space, like when everything was happening, when it was being torn down and everything.
Yes. Yeah, and
Okay.
I always thought, because I had taken pictures, I always thought, well, maybe there's a film here, and maybe I'll find something out about the community that, will inspire something. But really, my husband and I were having a lot of fun. And then, the third summer that we were there, we all got a letter saying,
Mm.
the campground is for sale. And, of course, we prayed that it would not go through, but it went through. Yeah.
Right.
So we were there, we were living there with everybody, living through all of the heartache with everybody at the same time.
Yeah. One of the things that I really loved about this film was the way that you showed the community more than you had people like talk about it. So, I mean, obviously there are interviews with people, but there were fewer than I've seen in other documentaries. Can you just talk about that decision to kind of like that show, don't tell kind of thing?
Yes, that was a well, at least I don't sleep very much because I have these epiphanies in the middle of the night. And that was one of them. Seriously, we had a whole film cut with the interviews. I did extensive interviews with
Mhm.
15 people, and they were all people that had either been there a long time or were sort of like the center of their section of the campground, I would say.
Okay.
There's always, like, in any community, there's always like people who kind of step up and look out for other people, and that's the house that you all hang out at.
Right.
So that's kind of how I picked them, and I interviewed all of them, and they all said amazing, very clear, um, expository things about Inlet View. And then I just had this thing where I was like, but you should be able to feel it. So if we can't make you feel it, we shouldn't do it.
Mm.
So poor John Young, editor, and I tortured him. We sat and I said, you got to take it all out. And we made this rule, you're only allowed to have something in there if it's really more about a memory that you had or an experience that you had there.
Mm.
So those became the stories. And then everything else, we went back through all of our footage, and we looked and we looked and we made sure, like the lady that gets the fish delivery in the morning, that just kind of happened. And the guys like helping each other on the roof, and all the stories of people punking each other. And, some of that was happening in real time. So yeah, we just wanted you to feel like how fun and great and neighborly it was. So
Yeah, well, that comes across really well through it. Yeah. I think one of the other things that think is kind of interesting about this film is that it kind of plays well into a larger national story just about housing in general. And can you see how, like, can you talk about how you see that this film fitting into that conversation?
Well, it's really interesting you say that because, of course, I have every Google alert for everything from RV sales to tiny houses. And, and I read all of that news so I can keep up with it. And there's been this huge resurgence in tiny houses,
Mhm.
and for many reasons, because they're efficient, because, we're running out of land pretty much, and also because, it solves a huge, houseless problem.
Mhm.
People who are houseless, that's a great solution for a lot of cities. And I think after mobile home parks were targeted by investors and people started to lose their homes, I think people started to realize, like, well, wait a minute, this is a really good, RVs and tiny houses and things like it are a really good solution to a housing problem because you can do them. They're very affordable. First of all, we didn't have any furniture in our camper. We had cushions on built-ins, and so
Mhm.
you don't need a lot, it's all kind of an all-in-one. As long as you can put up with the size and, a few inconveniences, it's very easy living. So I remember when I went in there to take photographs the first time, which is kind of how I fell in love with the place. I remember thinking, oh wow, these are the original tiny houses.
Yeah.
But Dwell magazine would have a heart attack. But I think it's kind of come full circle. I think there's been a big resurgence because there is such a housing crisis. There's been a big resurgence in this. So I hope that it has even more gravitas, that um, things like this are going away when they're actually really um, viable communities that people should be living in.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously, we don't really talk about the financial situation of the residents in the park, but I think the film also speaks to this need for rest for people who maybe aren't in like a super great financial position. Can you kind of talk about how your views on that in particular might have been like changed or strengthened through your, involvement with this community?
Well, I live in New York City and it is a constant barrage of consumption, you know? And, every day a giant Amazon truck and a fresh direct truck and 6 million messengers, come to everyone's door and deliver all the things that people have to have.
Hmm.
And I came back from the campground right at the beginning of the lockdown during COVID. And it really was just so life changing for me because even though I'm not really like that, but you can't help but be affected by your environment.
Yeah.
Coming back here after just being so at ease and not thinking about what I had, or not worrying about what everybody else thought about what I had, or just going like, oh, no one's going to look at me funny if I say, hey, we have leftover milk, do you want it, we're going home for the week. Just really simple things like that. The non-judgmental part of it was so
Mm.
huge. Um, and it wasn't non-judgmental in a judgy way, which sounds crazy, but I mean, we've gotten there, right? As a society, it's like, well, I'm non-judgmental. So, but it really was truly not judgmental. And I think because nobody cared what I did, or what I did for a living, or what I had, or any of it. And nobody ever asked. It was just like, how are you? How's your dad? How's your husband doing if he wasn't there with me? Really just caring about the people themselves. That was a huge lesson for me. So I hope that comes through. I mean, I went down there. I took a lot of stuff with me, and by the end, I think I was down to like 2 pair of shorts, and I was filming in my bare feet because you don't need it. You just don't
Right.
need it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, that kind of leads me to like my last question, which would be what is something that you learned from this project that maybe you hadn't encountered in previous projects that you'd done?
I think, I always fall in love with the people in my films. That just goes without saying. And I sort of feel like you can't make the film unless you're in love with them.
Mhm.
But I think in this case, it really forced me because there were so many people and they were all very different. I mean, yes, everyone was sort of in the same socioeconomic class, but as people, completely different, but also just really funny and fun and just their outlook on life. So I think I always say, like, I would give the movie back to have the place back because the feeling of being there was so great. And I hope I carry what they gave me with me for a long time.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to talk to us. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Oh, thank you, Elise. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful day.